Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real, where we talk about things that matter with people who matter. And today you are my people. I'm doing this without a guest, and I'm just pondering a lot of things, no surprise to anyone who knows me. And I've had a certain conversation circle around a few times in the last couple of weeks. And so I just wanted to take a few minutes and talk about what happens when something is completed. So when something is completed, a project, it could be a relationship, it could be a lot of things that are completed, there's an opening. And I've learned in my work with energy, vibration, and frequency that nature itself abhors a vacuum and will fill in that open space unless we are conscious of what we put into that open space. I'm even thinking about Don Miguel Ruiz's The Four Agreements, where he says if we don't intentionally put in new agreements, the old things that we are working on replacing or learning from will fill in. And so today I just wanted to talk about that. What happens when something comes to an end in your life? It could be a job, it could be a relationship, it could be a project. I have one person I'm working with right now who has completed a lot of amazing things in her organization, and there's this exhale kind of after that. And in that space of one thing completed and the next thing not yet quite taken up, what do we do with that empty open space? We don't always know what to do with that, especially if we are wired to be problem solvers or I'm not saying this in a negative way, but fixers or people who are in the space of doing things. That empty open space is uncomfortable and for many people unfamiliar, especially if we filled our lives with busyness, and not always on purpose. But I remember earlier in my career, I wanted to stay busy so I didn't have to face, it sounds so dramatic, doesn't it? Face the things that were maybe preventing me from being present. Let's put it that way. And as I've gotten older, that space of reflection and that space of pondering, which I'm calling wondering and pondering these days, is so needed. I need that in my life. And so I just wonder about that space that we tend to fill quickly because it's uncomfortable. And maybe I'll say it's not even necessarily uncomfortable, it's unfamiliar. Empty open space where we can breathe and discern, maybe, is unfamiliar to many of us who have established an identity as, if you're a parent, you know that. You're at the beck and call of your kids' activities and all of those things that we've just gotten really used to moving about, right? If something ends, there's could be a tendency to fill that space with worry, like what will happen if something doesn't come along to pick this up again. Maybe worry isn't quite the right word, but I can see where someone might feel that way. Maybe, again, as I said before, it's busyness or it's picking up old stories about ourselves. Sometimes people will say, well, I just got lucky with that thing that was so great. And now that it's over, I've heard people say, if I didn't have bad luck, I wouldn't have any luck at all. And then I think about the mindset that moves us toward, instead of allowing that empty space or that open space to allow us breathing room. And so I think the pursuit of certainty seems to be what many of us are familiar with. The pursuit of certainty. And I've said before that certainty kills curiosity. Because when we're looking for ways to be right about things and be certain about things, there's no room to explore the what ifs in the toward space. I hope that makes some sense. The what ifs in the toward space. We get into that what if in the away from space. Like, what if I never find another relationship? What if I never get another job? What if nobody ever likes me again? Or something, we have all these negative what ifs. What if, and they're heavy and worrisome. Instead, would there be a possibility that in that open space that it has been created for us, maybe in our by our own choosing or not, we could say, what if in a positive? What if this is the beginning of something brand new? I think this gets tied to our identity so much. Like, who am I? Who am I with or without this relationship, this project, whatever it might be? And we'll talk about that in a second. But so I wonder if the space that's been created either for us or by us, that space isn't really the problem, because that open space could be helping us create and enhance our own capacity, not just looking at what we've lost or what we've completed. And in that space of capacity, I think about that in a contrast to potential. Potential is maybe someday something will happen. I don't know that it's happening today, maybe someday. And we look towards something that we either do or don't really believe is possible. Capacity is right now, right here today. What is something I can do to increase my capacity for relationship building projects, whatever it might be for us? And capacity isn't the same as opportunity necessarily. It's simply expanding the space for something new to be attracted. Something new, maybe something we didn't even intend. Maybe because this one thing has ended, this relationship, this project, that is, in a bigger picture, the ability we are experiencing to attract something even greater to us. I remember reading in Marianne Williamson's book, I'm going to forget the title right now. It's about love. Shoot, I can't remember the name, but Marianne Williamson's first book, she wrote a story about a friend of hers who was an actor, and he really wanted this role. He was in between jobs, and he really wanted this role on a soap opera, I think it was. And he was really attached to getting this role on the soap opera. And she was talking to him about, if you're so attached to the soap opera that you want and you're trying so hard for that one thing, you might not be available when the movie comes up. The movie was way bigger for you and your future than the soap opera in this case. And so I wonder sometimes about that. If we're so attached to filling that space with something that is familiar, we might be limiting our capacity instead of expanding it. And it's not comfortable. Believe me, it's not comfortable when we're in that space of completion and when we don't really know how to celebrate the completion of the project. And I hate to say it like that in a relationship, but sometimes people come into your life for a season, sometimes they come into your life for a lifetime. And in that space of relationship too, it could be that this was the purpose for that relationship coming into my life. And so just being in a pondering and wondering mode where we can contemplate some of this before we jump too quickly to fill that open space with something that might not be for our greatest good. And I know that takes a lot of trust, that takes a lot of faith. And I'm just looking at, I'm at my home office today and I'm looking up on my bulletin board up here, and I've got uh, something I cut out from the universe, which is daily, we could get messages from the universe. And it says, please don't worry, I've got you, the universe. And that's my reminder that when this happens for me, try, no, not even try, just do. Allow that space, allow that space, allow the universe to come in and say, what's the capacity Jody needs to expand right now? What would be for Jody's greatest good? And instead of Jody getting busy putting stuff back in there, what if there's an open space for something even greater to be put in? And that's true for all of us. So we can't necessarily control always what comes next. And I think for some of us, not, this isn't mine, but I have a friend who would say she's been a control freak, her words, not mine. And being in control of her life and her family and her career and everything for her was the treadmill she was on. and she just knew that's how it was. And then something happened in hers and her husband's life when things slowed down and stopped, and they had the opportunity to retire. And for her, it's been an identity shift. And so, in that space of unfamiliarity, we get uncomfortable. But what if, in a toward, what if the universe really does have our back? What if it's the preparation of our capacity to allow something even greater to come into our space? So this is true again, whether you're changing jobs, whether you're retiring, whether you're recognizing, as I did in 2005, 21 years ago, that I was ready, or not even ready. I was creating another opportunity for myself in my career. In 2005, I stepped into entrepreneurial an entrepreneurial world, and I didn't mean to. I wasn't ready, but that was what the universe had in store for me. Could be becoming an empty nester. These are some of the conversations we had in my mastermind group this morning. What do you do when your kids are out of the house? When you've been a parent and that's been who you've known yourself to be, and now your kids have flown and they don't need you in the same way. Maybe it's just entering a new season of life, as I said earlier about retirement. You're a grandparent now, or something has shifted for you, and in that open space, it's uncomfortable. Okay, so let's talk about identity again, because I've been thinking about this too. Our identity is what we've known ourselves to be. If my identity is wrapped up in a title or a role, every change feels like I've lost part of myself. I was a parent. I was a teacher. I was a banker. I mean, whatever it might be. This was the identity I knew. And when that's shifted or changed, it could even be I was working so hard on this project at my work or wherever in my life, and this project took everything out of me. And now that it's completed, do I take time to celebrate the completion of the project, or do I feel that sense of what kind of letdown? And I looked this up because I wanted to know if there was a name for that. So I'm looking over here at my other screen, and I asked chat, and chat said there are actually several names for related experiences of completing a project or being in that open space, and each highlights a slightly different aspect of what people go through. There isn't one universally accepted term, but these are the closest. So let me run these by you and see if this resonates. One is called arrival fallacy. And this is the mistaken belief that I'll finally be happy when I get there. Once the goal is achieved, people often discover that the anticipated fulfillment is shorter lived than expected. This fits when someone has spent months or years pursuing a goal and then wonders, now what? Completely understand that. So that's one, the arrival fallacy. Another one is post-achievement depression or post-goal blues. It says this is not necessarily clinical depression, but it's the emotional dip that can follow the achievement of a goal. So it could be finishing a major project, publishing a book, retiring, completing a degree, selling a business, hosting a major event. I've had that feeling after chill out, or even finishing a long vacation. The structure, purpose, anticipation, and momentum disappear almost overnight. I think about that. I'm on my way to Montana to take our bikes on the way, and the planning of that has been since April. We've been planning this trip, and we leave tomorrow, and I can see that when we get back. Okay, all this planning we've done the thing now, we've been on the vacation, and we're back home, and we're tired and exhausted. I can see where that could happen, post-achievement depression or post-goal blues. And then goal disengagement. In psychology, this describes the process of letting go of a completed or unattainable goal. Healthy adjustment often requires finding new meaningful goals rather than simply stopping. Because we work toward things, our mind works toward things, not necessarily away from them. So I can see that. Liminality, I really like this term. Chris and I have talked about liminal space in the past. Liminality A liminal period is the threshold between identities or life stages. It's this liminal space, not there anymore, but not yet here. And that space can be really uncomfortable. You're no longer who you were, but you're not yet who you're becoming. Examples: graduation, again, retirement, becoming an empty nester, similar, right? Changing careers, finishing a major organizational initiative. Liminality isn't a problem to solve, it's a transition to inhabit. So if we think about that whole space of between the change happening and the acceptance of the change, there's that messy middle, that transition. And I taught at a college many years ago, I taught transitional leadership. And the text we used was William Bridges' Managing Transitions. And since then, I've been really aware of this messy middle in the transition between what was and what will be. And so I think about that even in identity when we say who we have been being or we see ourselves as who we've been being, the role can change, but I don't have to lose who I know myself to be. So the question would be then, who are you independent of the title on your business card, for example? When I was kind of wondering about my career before I started my business, golly, 20 years before that, 25 years ago, I made myself a business card. And it wasn't what I did, it was who I was. And I made my title, let me see if I can remember it, Catalyst for Evolution. So I was a communications coordinator. That's what I did for my job. That was my title, my role. But I made this business card for myself I called myself a catalyst for evolution. And it was really intentional that I gave myself that title because a catalyst doesn't burn itself up in the process of facilitating a change for someone else or themselves. I think it's a science term. I'm not the greatest scientist, but I think a catalyst is something having to do with chemical effects of things. And so, catalyst for evolution is part of the change, but doesn't burn up in the process. And so, in that space of who I was, independent of the role on my business card, that was a really fun project. And I think back, however many years ago I did that, I was opening myself up to the things I'm doing right now today for clients I'm working with. And that's really a cool precursor. In my mastermind group this morning, we talked about, we've been together since 2019, and we talked about looking back on who we've become in the process of the 7 years we've been together. And so that got me thinking back. Who I've been is who I'm now being, but more confidently. It's who I've always been, but more confidently. So when I'm going on this bike trip, getting ready, leaving tomorrow, I I realized that the whole trip is going to be about moving forward. We're moving, we're driving, and so we will be moving, but we're also taking our bikes. So we will be exploring things that we might not be able to explore in a car, and using our human powered, energy. We do if they're e-bikes, so we have a little bit of assistance, but I think about the space in between the work I do and my friend Carrie, who's going with me, her too, the work she does. We can't do our work while we're on our bikes. We won't be able to do our work while we are driving. And in that space, it could be, there's a lot of emotions that could come in that space. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen to my business or my job while I'm gone? But I I can still move forward as a person even when the job or the doing of the things I've been doing takes a little bit of a break or hiatus. So noticing the moving of me, that doesn't always mean doing more. Progress doesn't always mean doing more. It can mean doing things that are more joyful, more true to who we are. Sometimes progress is even allowing that space in between for clarity to catch up with us. Because I've been saying clarity is kindness. And if I can get clearer on things that might have tripped me up in the space I've created or allowed for that to happen, I'm really kind of excited for that. So moving toward something that might still be completely unknown or even a little bit unknown still brings up that it could bring up fear, but it could bring up possibility. So, Cottywomple, right? Cottywomple is moving purposefully toward a vague destination. You never know what you're going to find if you move purposefully and you allow things to come to you and show you what you could be recognizing. So maybe there isn't an opening in your life right now. So maybe this doesn't apply specifically to you. Um, but maybe your first responsibility, if there is an opening, isn't to fill it. Maybe any opening that you look at, it's just to notice. And I'm saying this to myself at the same time, right? So before you rush to fill the next opening in your life, maybe ask yourself, what else could this be here to teach me? What could this space be making possible that I couldn't have seen if I'd been in the race of things? So, as always, thanks for spending a few minutes with me. This is what we do when I don't have a guest. I love this time, and I'd love to hear from you. Has there been a time in your life where something ended, a project you completed, or a relationship ended, or something happened for you, and looking back, you realized that it created space for something even better that you couldn't have seen at the time, but that you see in hindsight? I'd love to hear about it. Please share your story in the comments. And as always, look for a way to get real this week. I will be on my vacation. I probably won't do an episode next week. And I will make sure that I post pictures and videos of my time in Montana. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful week. See you soon.